Good morning, 8th grade Bobcats. Actually, not good morning, good afternoon. It's morning now. Welcome back to another week at the Helena Middle School. On today's Bob lesson, it's going to be the first part of a two-part series that I'm going to warn you created quite a stir with the 8th graders last year, probably because in this article it kind of attacks their favorite materialistic thing, their technology. But for real though, these two Bob lessons created pretty good dialogue and discussion with teachers last year. This was based off an article that came out about a year ago, and I highlighted some points to talk about, how much these things can help our lives versus hinder our lives, and specifically our mental health. So hope you guys like it. Get buckled in. Let's get ready to make it a great week at the Helena Middle School. All right, here we are. Bob lesson: have smartphones destroyed a generation? Question mark. But first, let's be our best this week at HMS. Let's be Bob. Let's be safe. Let's be responsible. Let's be respectful. And let's be a learner. Before we get into this article, it's important to define what generations are. This article talks about the I generation. Generations are usually groupings of people by certain ages, and a lot of times they're based around a significant historical event like the baby boomer era. If you don't know what the baby boomer era, go ask one of your social studies teachers. Shout out Mr. Hustad, Miss Sarum Garden. They will tell you about the baby boomer era. That's typically people born in the 1940s through around mid-1965. And many of your teachers are members of Generation X, which is mid-60s to mid-80s. Millennials, which is what you people have been known for most of your lives up until this article, born 1986 to early 2000s, and then I generation were all kids born 1995 to 2012. We're going to talk about why here in a moment. So to begin this, I'm going to talk about an article that a researcher who researches the difference between teens from decades or generations on. And in the highlighted on the left, he says, around 2012, I noticed abrupt shifts in teen behaviors and emotional states. The gentle slopes of the line graphs became steep mountains and sheer cliffs, and many of the distinctive characteristics of the millennial generation began to disappear. In all of my analysis of the generation data, some researching back to the 1930s, I had never seen anything like it. At first, I presumed these might be blips, but the trends persisted across several years and series of national surveys. The changes weren't just in degree, but in kind. We're back on the highlighted part here on the right now. The biggest difference between the millennials, which are maybe kids that are 10 years older than you, and their predecessors, which are considered to be you, was in how they viewed the world. Today's teens, that's you, differ from the millennials, not just in their views, but in how they spend their time. And this is a huge part of what this article is about. The experiences they have every day are radically different from those of the generation that came of age just a few years before them. This researcher noted that got cut off was 2012 marked when more people than not, over 50%, had smartphones. The advent of the smartphone and its cousin, the tablet, was followed quickly by hand-wringing about the deleterious effects of screen time. But the impact of these devices has not been fully appreciated and goes far beyond the usual concerns about curtailed attention spans. We are highlighted again. The arrival of the smartphone has radically changed every aspect of teenagers' lives, from the nature of their social interactions to their mental health. That's a huge thing of what this article is going to be about. These changes have affected young people in every corner of the nation, in every type of household. The trends appear among teens, poor and rich, every ethnic background, cities, suburbs, small towns just like ours. Wherever there are cell towers, there are teens living their lives on the smartphone. Even a seismic event, a war, a technological leap, a free concert in the mud plays an outsized role in shaping a group of young people. No single factor ever defines a generation. Parenting styles continue to change, as do school curricula and culture, and these things do matter. We're back highlighted again, but the twin rise of the smartphone and social media has caused an earthquake of a magnitude we've never seen in a very long time. Researchers never seen in a very long time, if ever. There's compelling evidence that the devices we've placed in young people's hands, that's you, are having a profound effects on their lives, making them seriously unhappy. And folks, this is what this article is going to further get into, is the effects that research is showing smartphones is having on us as human beings, but especially you guys in your generation as teenagers, when your brains aren't fully developed yet and you are living the iGeneration lifestyle. On to the next page. If today's teens were a generation of grinds, and when they say generation grinds, they're talking about grinders, people that really work hard, we'd see that in the data. But 8th, 10th, and 12th graders in this decade actually spend less time on homework than teens did when they were my generation, when we were your age, did in the early 90s. The time that seniors spend on activities such as student clubs and sports and exercise has changed little in recent years. Combined with the decline in working for pay, that's the decline in high school kids your age that are having part-time jobs working for pay. This means iGen teens have more leisure time than teens did in my and your teacher's generation, not less. So now we're highlighted again. So what are they doing with all that time? They're on their phone, in their rooms, alone, and often distressed. One of the ironies of iGen is that despite spending more time under the same roof as their parents, today's teens can hardly be said to be closer to their mothers and fathers or guardians than their predecessors were. Quote from this article, "I've seen my friends with their families. They don't talk to them," Athena told me. "They just say, okay, okay, whatever," while they're on their phones. You guys ever catch yourself doing that to your parents or your guardians? That's just a question from me. They don't pay attention to their family, unquote. Like her peers, Athena is an expert at tuning out her parents so she can focus on her phone. How many times have your guardian said, will you put your phone down and talk to me? Please put the phone away. She spent much of her summer keeping up with her friends, but nearly all of it was over text or Snapchat. It wasn't in person. It was over text or Snapchat keeping up with their friends. Just heard a student say this morning that they're mad at you because they were mad at another student because they ruined their Snap streak. Back to the quotes. "I've been on my phone more than I've been with actual people," she said. "My bed has like an imprint of my body." And this next picture I want you to look closely at. This kind of sums up how a lot of your generation, and I'll say I'm just as guilty at night when I'm unwinding, but is spending their time. It's not face to face with one another anymore. It's not playing games, playing outside, getting together in person. It's connecting through these devices alone in their bed with the lights out and a bright screen. For you visual learners, here is a graph that is showing the time spent not hanging out with friends. And if you can see, black, blue, and red, those are all millennials, iGeneration, 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade, and you see that line going right down the middle in 2007. That's when the iPhone was released. 2007 is an important date because it's not only the iPhone, it's when technology really took off, social media really took off, and you can see ever since that happened, time spent with friends has drastically gone down. With less time spent connecting with one another, what are the repercussions of this? The survey that this author gave to teens, the survey asked teens how happy they are and also how much of their leisure time they spend on various activities, including non-screen activities such as in-person social interactions and exercise, and in recent years, screen activities such as using social media, texting, Snapchat, browsing the web, etc. The results could not be clearer. Teens who spend more time on average on screen activities are more likely to be unhappy. And those who spend more time than average on non-screen activities are more likely to be happy. Think very closely about this. There's not a single exception. All screen activities are linked to less happiness, and all non-screen activities are linked to more happiness. 8th graders who spend 10 or more hours a week on social media are 56% more likely to say they're unhappy than those who devote less time to social media. Admittedly, 10 hours a week is a lot, but those who spend 6 to 9 hours a week on social media are still 47% more likely to say they are unhappy than those who use social media less. The opposite is true of in-person interactions. Those who spend an above average amount of time with their friends in person are 20% less likely to say they're unhappy than those who hang out for a below average amount of time. So what is this saying? This is saying, and in closing, if you were going to give advice for a happy adolescent, that's you, that's your age, based on this survey, it would be straightforward. Put down the phone, turn off the laptop, and do something, anything that does not involve a screen. I think so many times when we're unhappy, we go to our phone to get on social media, to get a like, to get a Snapchat, to put something out there for our happiness. But what this research is showing is that it actually makes us less happy. This week's quote of the week comes from Mr. Apple himself, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, if you're not familiar with him, was essentially credited with saving the entire Apple company. His innovation was what turned Apple into what it is today, and arguably he was the pioneer of technology that we have today. And in an interview from several years back, right when iPads were coming out, a newspaper reporter, some reporter of some time, asked him, quote, "So your kids must love the iPad?" I asked Mr. Jobs, trying to change the subject. The company's first tablet was just hitting the shelves. And the quote from Steve Jobs was, "They haven't used it," he told me. "We limit how much technology our kids use at home." So I ask you, if Steve Jobs, whose entire purpose in life was creating technology to make people's lives easier, his entire purpose was selling products and having consumers like yourself, like myself, use those products. And that is what his whole life is about, yet he's limiting the amount of technology his kids use at home. What does that tell us? I have one final video that outlines the danger of cell phones. All right, let's give away some jelly beans, shall we? Last week's winners, or this week's winners, Riley Hammond, Seth Lieberg, Maya Parr, Bruce Bentley, and Sam Kaiser. The last week's riddle was what starts with an E, ends with an E, and only has one letter in it. Of course, that would be an envelope. For some of you sixth graders who are new to this, I just draw the first 5 correct answers every week. So if you did have the correct answer, but you didn't get your name drawn, hang in there. Maybe it's next week. Speaking of next week, this week's Jelly Bean question of the week is, what breaks but never falls, falls but never breaks? And I'm looking for 2 things, and they are kind of closely related. If you think you know the answer, get your answer submitted to the bomb box in the counseling area by the end of the week, and tune in next week to see if you're a winner. All right, Bobcats, let's make it a great week at the Helena Middle School.